Good day, everyone. I would like to greet you all, especially Mr. Ognain Zlatev, Head of Representation in Head of Representation of European Commission in Republic of Croatia, representatives of Europe Direct Information Centers and Europe Information Centers, especially our friends, EDICs from Cluj, Romania, from Veliko Trnovo, Bulgaria, and Slavonski Brod, Croatia. We are greeting the professors and students of high schools, representatives from the network of schools ambassadors and European Parliament in Croatia, academic community and media. Welcome to the Citizens Dialogue, A Strong Europe in the World of Challenges. My name is Iva Peric, a representative of Europe House Slavonski Brod, a host institution of EDKS Slavonski Brod. Today's dialogue will last for an hour, during which Mr. Ognain Zlatev will cover following topics. Main results of the Croatian presidency of the Council of the European Union, the current state of play and future prospects of the EU, and the future of Europe, the opportunities, constraints, and the challenges. We have imagined following concept of the dialogue. It will start with a short introductory on the main challenges and achievements of the Croatian presidency. This would be followed by the presentation of the current state of play of the European Commission plans and initiatives for the future, with the focus on the recovery plan. And after the presentation, you will have a chance to ask questions and engage in a dialogue with Mr. Ognain Zlatev. We kindly ask you to keep your microphones muted during the whole meeting in order to avoid any unnecessary noise or distraction. And in case you would like to ask a question, you can raise a hand, and after which you're going to be invited to ask them. If you prefer, you can also ask your questions in the chat. Without further ado, Mr. Zlatev, due to the referendum decision of the United Kingdom to leave the Union and to resign from the planned presidency of the Council, based on the Council decision, Republic Croatia has had sharing of the Council from 1st of January 2020 instead of the second half of the 2026. So given the numerous duties of the presiding state, from organizing a number of events and meetings to the financing of the presidency itself on one hand, and on the other hand, the relatively modest experience of the Croatian administration in similar events, the preparation of and implementation of the presidency has been a major challenge for the Republic of Croatia. The issue of Brexit and the unknown composition of the European Parliament were just some of the additional challenges that Croatia had to face in that period. So given all these circumstances, how do you assess the success of the Croatian presidency of the Council of the EU? And in your opinion, what are the main results? What are the main results of the Croatian presidency?
Thank you very much, Eva. You hear me well?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Let me first start with thanking Božica and the team of Europe Direct Information Center in Slavonski Brod, as well as all you guys that bear and share part of your time to listen to my reflections and engage into dialogue. It's really a great initiative, and I'm really happy to see that despite these rather weird circumstances, we're still able to communicate, although not in the way that I would prefer, like in person, and enjoying also the live contact with audiences. But hopefully this also will come in the future days. You're quite right when you said that the Croatian presidency started in a rather interesting circumstances. I can recall, and if I'm allowed to make a parallel with the Bulgarian presidency, which was in 2018, again, first presidency of a relatively young member state like Croatia. We have a very famous professor of European studies in Bulgaria, Professor Ingrid Chikova, and she's really like the founding mother, I call her, of the European idea in Bulgaria. And she often used this phrase that for a new member state, when the new member state gets its first presidency, this is like the graduation exam. And in the case of Bulgaria, it just happened so that it happened on the 11th year of Bulgaria's membership in the EU. So you can say that it was like the graduation exam. But in the case of Croatia, which is interesting, it came actually even earlier. And regardless of this, regardless of the fact that Croatia was only 7-year member of the EU when it had to chair the EU, nevertheless, Croatia demonstrated its best. And despite all these really strange circumstances and the fact that it had to adapt very quickly its original program in the course of the presidency, it did very well. I mean, don't forget that this is really an unprecedented situation, which never happened before to any country, be it old member state, new member state. I don't like these comparisons, but I mean, let's face it. Nevertheless, Croatia has managed to adapt and very quickly start implementing its program the way it has been planned, and it was successfully achieved. In our slang within the European Commission, within the European institutions, we say that all presidencies are successful. There is no unsuccessful presidency. Every presidency is successful. But there are presidencies that are going to be remembered. And for sure, Croatian presidency is going to be remembered by many things. It is going to be remembered by the citizens of Croatia, because it was the first presidency coming very shortly after the country became a fully fledged EU member. It will be also remembered by all the other European citizens. Also, what needs to be underlined is that just a year ago, it was just before the start of the Croatian presidency, I remember we had a discussion, many discussions actually, with Croatian Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs, with the colleagues there, with the special secretariat for the presidency. And they were all asking us, okay, tell us what to prepare for what kind of challenges, what kind of difficulties. and we were jokingly saying that you have to prepare for the unexpected. Of course, nobody had in mind that what is going to happen to us only just a couple of months into the year of 2020, the beginning of the presidency. But nevertheless, again, I said Croatia's government administration put an extra effort and really prepared very well for all these many events that have been originally planned. I can tell you that I've been witnessing all kind of preparatory meetings, different kind of timetables that we have been negotiating, discussing very complicated schedules, how to have in parallel several meetings in several ministerial meetings, let's say in several cities of Croatia that are not necessarily easily to connect at one point. But at the end of the day, you see what happened. Comes this virus and turns the whole agenda upside down. There's additional complication and additional challenge that Croatia had to face, and it was the devastating earthquake that hit Zagreb on that Saturday morning of 22nd of March. Perhaps for most of you, it does not mean anything, but I think for all of us that live here in Zagreb, it was really another shock, because a lot of the governmental buildings have been actually affected because of the earthquake. And again, this contributed to the additional burden of finding a way out and how to rearrange the things and plans around the presidency. So you already mentioned one of the achievements that despite this very complicated backdrop, Croatian president has managed to achieve, and that was the orderly Brexit, which was really very important because it would have given us some time to now at the end until the end of this year, and we have all of us hope that finally this week and in the coming days we finally are going to have this agreement with the United Kingdom on our future relationship. This is one very important achievement. Another important achievement of the Croatian presidency that it laid the basis for the good and productive negotiations over the next multi-annual financial framework. Don't forget that at the time we were preparing and Croatia was preparing its presidency, nobody at all anticipated that apart from the next multi-annual financial framework, we should also be considering and trying to find a way how to give additional boost to our economies that were heavily affected by this extreme challenge called COVID-19. So Croatia, during Croatian presidency, the solid foundations for the next MFF were actually also laid down. Also very important, probably I should have started with this, was that actually because of this COVID-19, the whole work and modus operandi of the presidency had to be rearranged. I mean, nobody up till now was anticipating that we will have something like more than 70% of the meetings held online. We have not been prepared for this. And it was very good it was already in March, I remember, it was just after the Gimnich format meeting in Croatia here in the beginning of March. Very quickly after that, the Croatian presidency, in cooperation with the Council and also with the member states, has been able to actually reformat the way all these meetings should take place, and most of them were turned into online format. Of course, as you know, there are these special meetings that can actual decisions could be taken. They have still to be physical, so they were still held. Then, when the pandemic hit us hardly, remember that in the very beginning, the response of the different member states and the response of the institutions was not coordinated. Thank God, very quickly, you know that we are fast learners. Both European institutions, I mean European Commission, but also member states, the Council, and Croatia is chairing the Council, have been able to actually introduce gradually coordinating measures so that we, on one hand, support each other whenever there is a need. You remember in the beginning, there were huge needs of equipment, masks, protective clothing, respirators, these things that were not fully available in all member states. So through coordinating efforts, and I'm really proud of the institution that I work for, the European Commission, we have been able to propose and very quickly introduced measures that could help us saving lives. You remember again back in March and April, tens of thousands of Europeans being stranded in different airports across the globe. Again, during these coordinating efforts, and Croatia played an important role there, we have been able to bring all these people back home. And then again, another extremely important achievement, and it was really meant to be like the crown jewel, if I may say so, of the Croatian presidency. This is the new methodology related to EU enlargement and the Zagreb summit. You remember that now, you know, this was only spring and it looks so long time ago, where Albania and the Republic of North Macedonia received invitations to start the negotiations for EU accession. I think building on what has already been started 2 years ago during the Bulgarian presidency, and now building it up on it, Croatia has managed to actually elevate the European perspective of the Western Balkan countries to a higher level. And with this concrete declaration coming out of the Zagreb summit, it showed and laid the future path for uh, our region here, the countries from our region that are aspiring for the EU. I think this is also one of the landmarks that will be really remembered when you talk about Croatian presidency. And then, of course, we can talk about and I can make the how to say gradual transition to the other topic because they go hand in hand uh, in any case, and that is the work of the European institutions, the European Union in the coming months and years. Probably I should also mention one important achievement of the Croatian presidency, that it was also not only we had the Zagreb summit dedicated to the European perspective of the Western Balkans, but also again during the auspices of the Croatian presidency, we also had the Eastern Partnership Summit. This is also very important that in one stretch, in one presidency, we had two very important summits that give political steer and political guidance to the European perspective of our immediate neighborhood, the Western Balkans and the Eastern Partnership. Now, speaking about the future, yesterday we marked the first year of the new commission, of the commission of President von der Leyen. Perhaps also not all of you would remember, but again, it was about 1 year ago when President von der Leyen received the endorsement of the European Parliament, and her commission started its operation. Again, very quickly into the start of this commission, no matter the very ambitious agenda of the commission, it also had to adapt to the new circumstances because, again, as I said, we appeared in an unprecedented situation where nobody ever had experienced this, meaning a little virus that is actually devastating all our lives, our economies, and our way of living. This has never happened before in our lives. In the history of the European Union, we remembered so many crises happening, especially in the last 10, 15 years, but we never had crisis of such proportions. It was really something unprecedented, and that's why we had to look for unprecedented responses. The Commission response was directed in several directions. First of all, was to take care of the health systems across the board in all member states and to take care of the health of all our citizens. Number one. Number two was to check and help find the ways to support our economies, because our economies, we saw that our economies were hit by the economic crisis of 2008, and we were celebrating that in the last 6 or 7 years, our economy, European economy, was demonstrating extremely good results. Very low level, practically the lowest ever levels of unemployment, very good rise and surpluses of our economy. But at the end of the day, you see, comes this little virus and ruins practically everything. So very quickly, the Commission had to come up with all kind of proposals. I'm not going to name all the measures. I was just reading the statistics that since the beginning of the crisis, the Commission come up with 1,104 different measures to support economies of the European Union member states. This is really huge. I mean, I don't know if you're going to, if you can imagine this, but this is really huge. And time and again, I think we should be all grateful of the fact that we are all, including Croatia, Romania, Bulgaria, we're all members of this Union, because just imagine for a second that we were not part of the European Union, everything was going to look quite differently. And because we are a strong union, we are a powerful union, and we care about everybody in need, not only our citizens but also our friends in the neighborhood. You know that among these 1,104 different measures, there are also measures supporting our neighbors, for example, enabling them also access to the new vaccines, also targeted financing. I'm talking about the different financial instruments meant for the countries in the Western Balkans, etc., etc. So, all in all, as you see, we are looking forward despite our despite this complicated situation we are in. Nevertheless, we have our goals and we are following them. One of the greatest achievements of the first year of the von der Leyen Commission is the start. It was actually done already on the third month, less than 100 days in the office, of the so-called Green Deal. This is going to be like our new investment strategy that is going to actually change our lives for good. And we see that now more and more world powers outside the European Union are actually also subscribing to the goals and to the visions of the Green Deal. The other very strategic goal that we have been also able to start building upon, this is the digital transformation. Both the Green Deal and the digital transformation are actually the two main pillars, two main directions of all the work that the Commission was doing in the last year, but also is going to do in the years to come. And that's why you will be hearing more and more about this. You know that also apart from the vision and agenda of the von der Leyen Commission is to make Europe a global leader in the digital innovation, that we have to become much stronger in terms of competitiveness on the global stage. The crisis actually demonstrated certain weaknesses of our systems, especially the healthcare system. And that's why now we started talking and negotiating about so-called European Health Union. This is something very important because unfortunately this crisis came and hit us, but we are not sure if, let's say, next year or in the next years, something similar would reappear. So we really need to be protected, and our health system need to work in better coordination. One last thing before I give you also the floor for questions. I hope you're going to have questions. I already mentioned this a while ago, but one of the unprecedented and really, again, kind of landmarks of the first year of the von der Leyen Commission is the proposal of the so-called Next Generation EU. This is the instrument that the Commission proposes, again, unprecedentedly, financial instrument to support the economies of the member state so that they very quickly, in the first couple of years or 3 years from now, actually rebounds and manage to how to say, manage to revive the lives of everybody, because all our economies are suffering now between 5 to 10% losses. And this is not good, because if we really want to have a very strong health and social systems, we have to have our economies back on track as soon as possible. And in order to do this, we need to have in place the realization of Next Generation EU and also the unprecedented next MFF, which again is unprecedented in terms of size and volume. You know that apart from the political decision that has been taken by the leaders back in July, there are still certain member states that are voicing their disagreement. But I do hope that at the end of the day, all political leaders in Europe will demonstrate their responsibility vis-a-vis the European citizens. That at the end of the day, we're going to have both the next multi-annual financial framework and the next generation EU in place, approved, and started operating as soon as possible for the best of our citizens and our economies and our way of life. I suggest I stop here for a moment, and in the meantime, you can start with your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zlatev. I invite you now, if you would like to ask a question, to do so either by raising a hand, and then we are going to invite you, or by asking a question in the chat. And while we are waiting, we have received some of the questions while preparing for the dialogue via email. So I'm going to ask you one of them and to give some time to people to gather the courage. We know that one of the priorities of the Croatian presidency was including the Western Balkan in the European Union's enlargement policy. So was any progress made during the presidency in regards to this?
Well, I think quite a substantial progress has been made. First of all, as I mentioned, back in March, we had, it was again during the Croatian presidency, the new methodology, new enlargement has been adopted by the Commission and also accepted by the members, by the states that are aspiring to become EU members. That's one thing. Secondly, Albania and Republic of North Macedonia received invitations. This is also something very concretely. And they are at a different technical level, advancement in the negotiations with other countries here from the region that are aspiring for the EU membership. Bearing in mind that this more than 20 years of kind of standstill of negotiations between the EU and the countries from the region, I think it is actually a rather big achievement. And based on that, now of course it came, the decisions came after the Croatian presidency, but based on that now, for example, there are also very concrete financial packages for the countries from the Western Balkan that will help reform their economies and societies and much quickly become members.
Thank you very much. I kindly ask you to ask your questions in person. It would be much more interactive. And in the meantime, one more question regarding the Croatian presidency. The Croatian government established the organizational structure for the presidency sometime in July 2018. Would you say that this 18-month period of time was a little bit of kind of too short? Did Croatia face a time crunch in order to complete all of the tasks they had to do in preparation for the presidency?
No, I wouldn't say so. I think, regardless of the timing, I think the Croatian government, different Croatian authorities, including local authorities, Županije, etc., they prepared very well. I am a witness of the efforts that have been put in the preparation, and I've really felt very sorry because only very few of the, let's say, especially regional authorities, have been able to actually demonstrate the results of their preparations because the physical meetings have been called off. I'm sure that the preparations were very good, and if we were in a normal circumstances, we would have had even better and more remembered presidency.
Mr. Ognain Zlatev, do you see the questions in the chat? Would you like me to read them?
Yeah, I actually see 3 questions.
Yes.
Let me just put my glasses. First question was
Answered.
yes. The second question was, do you think that was also, what is your reaction on the news in the media about Croatia's alleged violence? Well, you know, there was a technical mission from the European Commission that came to investigate and acquaint itself with the situation on the border, and we're waiting for the outcome and for the results. So whenever this is published, it should be communicated to the society. It has to be said that the Croatian police and the Croatian Ministry of Interior works in close cooperation with all the services of the European Commission. So everything proceeds as it should be. There's a question about the role of the citizens and civil society in Croatian presidency. Well, again, to my knowledge, there were a lot of initiatives also organized by civil society organizations. I remember Crossall was, for example, organizing and planning a number of events. Unfortunately, because of the corona and the fact that we had to call off most of the physical meetings, I don't think all of them have materialized. So this is really something like Deus ex machina. I mean, something you don't have control of. But there was such a cooperation between the authorities and the civil society organization, to my knowledge. There's one more message. Just a second. Yeah, I'm optimistic because I know the question is, are you optimistic about the recovery? Oh, sorry. Recovery of Europe after COVID pandemic. I'm optimistic because I see the energy and the resources that has been put in place, and I'm sure they're sufficient to help the speedy recovery. What we need to overcome in the coming days, it's really a matter of days, is to have these 2 member states that are for the moment kind of obstructing the way or the mechanism or the link between the rule of law and the disbursement of the next budget and the next generation EU. And then we'll start, because in the meantime, while we're waiting for this to happen, it's important to mention that each member state is preparing, together with the services of the Commission, the so-called reform and recovery plans. They are different for each country because the needs in the different countries are different. I can tell, for example, that we work very closely with Croatian authorities. They're preparing their plans, and once their plans are approved and we have the financing also approved, everything will start to unfold very fast. Let's not forget that the idea of this next generation EU was actually not to wait for I don't know how many years before the funding comes, but the idea is actually to have the money front loaded, so to have it now, I mean in the coming months, because all these small and medium enterprises, farmers, they need the money now. They don't need the money in 5 years. So I'm optimistic now. I wanted to say. See more questions. We know the priorities of the Republic of Croatia largely overlapped with the priorities of the presidency. Well, this is there is no other way but that the priorities of the trio, in this case Romania, Finland, and Croatia, were coordinated among themselves. So each trio has its, let's say, 4 or 5 priorities, And then based on that, each member state, when it takes over the presidency, develops its own priorities, but they are more or less in line. I mean, I can tell you, for example, the priorities of the trio of the Troika of Romania, Finland, and Croatia, and those was that we are working for a union for jobs, growth, and competitiveness, union that empowers and protects its citizens, energy union with a forward-looking climate policy, union of freedom, security, and justice, and union as a strong global actor. As you see, nothing quite different. And then from there, Croatia has formulated its own priorities. It was Europe that develops, Europe that connects, Europe that protects, and influential Europe in the world of challenges.
There is one person who wants to ask you a question in person, so maybe we can
of course.
Give them a chance. Maja Kuzmic.
Hello, everybody. I would like, in the context of rapid digital and social transformation, I've got a question. So we should strive for synergy between relevant digital skills and some life skills from an early age through the education system. So the question is, are EU education policy makers recommended that school curricula should develop balanced set of skills and competencies that foster the resilience, the critical thinking, and innovation potential of the individual?
Thank you for this question. It is actually part of the portfolio of Bulgarian Commissioner Mrs. Gabriel. As you know, all EU programs that are meant for education, skills development of young people, they were actually among the first that received serious financial increase in comparison with other EU programs. And as a matter of fact, even the members of the European Parliament insisted on even higher increasing the financial resources, because everybody in Brussels, in the European Parliament, and in the European Commission, of course, understands the importance of adapting and coordinating our education systems and preparing our young people for the future. And for that, you need new skills that need to be developed and introduced. So from that point of view, this is one of the priority areas, and it is going to receive ongoing support by this commission and by any other commission. I see there's a question on your expectations on Turkey joining EU. It's a tricky one. You know that we have a special relation with special relationship for Turkey with Turkey. On one hand, now for several decades, Turkey is a candidate, has a candidate status. On the other hand, especially in the recent years, we see certain acts of the Turkish leadership that are rather hostile vis-a-vis some of the EU member states. I mean, mainly Cyprus and Greece. You know that in the coming, during the coming European Council on the 10th and 11th of December, we are going to Turkey's relationship with Turkey is actually one of the points on the agenda for discussion. So let's see what the leaders are going to come up with as what is seen as a goodwill gesture. Turkey has called back its exploration vessel, which was exploring the waters between Turkey, Cyprus, and Greece. So now it has been called back into the Turkish territorial waters. So let's see the outcome next week of the discussions at the European Council. I see two more questions here in the chat. many say that this crisis showed the negative side of the EU. How do you comment? Well, tell me please, what do you mean by the negative side of the EU? I mean, could you please elaborate? I actually can argue that the crisis, like every crisis we had in the recent years, demonstrated only the positive side of the EU. So please elaborate what you mean by negative side. What's the Croatian position about the opposition of Hungary and Poland to the new budget? Well, I don't know what is the Croatian position. You have to ask the government, but at least what I know is that Croatian government has supported all the remaining 25 member states in their position vis-a-vis having the next multi-annual financial framework and the next generation EU approved and put in place as soon as possible. What else? Is it true that due to the COVID crisis, the urgency of climate change mitigation and the need for sustainable growth are not as important? No, not at all. Not at all. As I said, the Green Deal and the digital transformation are seen as the main drivers, the two pillars of our growth strategy in the current and in the current period and in the period next to come. So in no way this crisis is going to hamper our efforts. We will spare no efforts in achieving the goals of the Green Deal. There's another question. Education. Shouldn't the health of the students be in the first place? Of course, I agree that the health of all citizens should be task number one. For the moment, I mean, my son, for example, goes to school, and I see and I can make the difference during the summer period and the spring period when the kids were locked at home. I see that nevertheless the kids are feeling much better when they go to school. Of course, there should be a right balance, and that's why the school managers, the school principals, and the education authorities have to keep and this very right balance between, on one hand, the social needs and the educational needs of the kids, but also their health. For the moment, this is my, at least I'm telling you, this is my impression from my personal experience. I think for the moment, from what I can see, the authorities here in Croatia are handling, the educational authorities are handling the situation quite well. In the school where my son goes, there were a couple of kids that have been tested positive, and they have been immediately isolated, but at the same time, the education continues so far, and they're following all the epidemiological measures, and so far I think it's also good for them, for the kids, especially, as I said, not only for their educational needs, but also for their social needs, because being locked at home all day with the parents is not very good for at the end of the day, for the psyche of the kid. But again, this should not be done at the expense of the health. I mean, health is overarching priority for everybody.
Thank you very much. You skipped one question, so I'm going to read it to you. European Commission pointed that the European economy will need to be revived after the crisis, and that the Green Plan will financially stimulate it in a way that transforms it, bearing in mind that the health of our planet. Can you explain how that can be done?
No, it would be very hard task for me to explain it in several minutes. But basically, the idea is that we all have to come to our senses and to our minds. It has to reach our minds that we cannot continue with exhausting the natural resources of our planet and we really need to do something. Otherwise, in let's say 10, 20, 30, 40 years, we will run off of any kind of mineral fuels, for example. We are going to kill all our environment, the so-called the lungs of the planet, if we continue with, on one hand, industrial expansion without taking care of the uh, environment. And that's why we support the investments in renewable energy sources, for example, introducing of all kind of technologies that are actually preserving, that are not harmful to the environment, and that at the end of the day also have impact on human health. But it's a long process, and it's really like a strategic goal. That's why we put these goals until 2050, for example, to become climate neutral continent. So let's see. But it depends, how to say, on all of us, and it takes a global effort, because there is no point if we put these goals, we follow them, and at the same time you have another, let's say, big world power at the other end of the world that says, okay, we don't care, and we're not going to observe any of these goals. So it doesn't make very much sense. That's why there are some positive signs in the recent months. Now with the election, the new U.S. administration on one hand, which declared that they will reconsider the U.S. position and return to the Paris Agreement, for example. And then we have now certain very positive moves on behalf of China. So let's hope that with joint efforts, we're really going to achieve these goals.
Thank you very much. I think the clarification from Radio Slavonia
Yeah.
came. What they meant, that in the beginning of the crisis, many said that the EU's responses were very slow, or when deciding about the budget, some countries had a dispute about the right approach. And, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is one of my favorite questions, I have to say. It is rather, how to say, typical when the crisis hit us, whatever crisis of whatever nature. Of course, you first blame it on Brussels, and you blame it on the European institutions. When there are certain something positive happens, you take credit as a national government. This happens all the time. If you look in the history of the European Union, you see that it happens all the time. Whenever there is something bad happening, blame it on Brussels. Now, when you talk about this crisis with COVID, let's not forget that healthcare is actually national competence. Healthcare is not EU-wide competence. And there are certain facts that now, how to say, certain member states are not happy to remember. But in the very beginning of this year, the European Commission has asked all the member states to come up with kind of feedback. What is the level of preparedness in case of certain, it was not called pandemic at the time, but such kind of epidemic would hit us, because this was the time in the beginning of the year when the alarming news from China started to appear. And I have to tell you that when the European Commission sent around this question around all the member states, some of the member states didn't even bother to respond. What is the level of preparedness in their own countries? And that's why in the very beginning we didn't have the right picture. What was the level of our resources? We didn't know, for example, if in each member state we had sufficient number of protective equipment, masks, gloves, etc., etc. And that's why in the very beginning we appeared in situations where, for example, certain member states refused to export such type of protective equipment to another country, because they said we want to keep it for ourselves. And that's why I said in my presentation that now more and more we're talking about health union. We need to coordinate our health systems better. We need to coordinate the availability of our resources related to healthcare better, so that we never end up in such situation that one country refuses to export or transfer, for example, masks or whatever other uh, protective equipment to another country, and then you have immediately third countries entering here and making a big PR with flags. See, we're coming from the other end of the world to support certain member states, and EU is not supporting them. I mean, this is only propaganda and PR tricks. But in order to do so, it is the decision of the member states that we need to work together. And the competences, if you want to have European competences, you have to give it to Brussels. Otherwise, it is not fair to blame Brussels for something which Brussels doesn't have any responsibility. Travel in the future. Travel in the future. Yeah, this is really very, very pressing question for all of us. I do hope that, first of all, now with the introduction of the vaccines, very soon we are going to get these vaccines. They're going to prove successful, and this is going to, first of all, cut the numbers of new infected cases to a very minimum, and the travel restrictions are going to be lifted. You know that today and yesterday and today and in the coming days, actually, at the political level, there will be discussions about, for example, lifting the restrictions related to, let's say, the ski resorts. You know that there are many member states that are actually heavily dependent on ski resorts. Again, this is not a competence of Brussels to decide on that. We could coordinate in a way, but basically it should be the decision of each of the member states. I also would like to see the end of these restrictions, but until the numbers of new infected cases are brought down, I don't think we're going to see this.
Okay, we have a question about that the Commission has put a lot of emphasis on mobility in the next Erasmus Plus programming period. Yeah. What is the position now in this COVID situation? Will there be a retreat?
No, I don't think so. On the contrary, as I said, Erasmus is actually seen as one of the most, if not the most successful European program. And I'm sure despite this current situation, we're going to keep the levels and somehow find a way out. I mean, I don't have a magic crystal ball in my hands. I cannot tell you how, but I'm sure there will be a way out, because this is an extremely good and useful program for young people, but also for acquiring new skills, which later on are brought back into the national economies. And we have to build upon the achievements that we have been doing over these years. Also, Erasmus has another, I don't know if you're aware of this fact, but Erasmus has also another, how to say, added value, apart from the helping young people to get new skills, new knowledge, visit new places, exchange with their peers. But one of the achievements of Erasmus is that actually out of 9 million Erasmus students, it was 2 years ago, out of 9 million Erasmus students, 1 million became family later on. So this is also contributing to our demographic situation.
Thank you for the answer. And we have received two more questions. They are both related to European Green Deal. One is, does the EU develop specific measures related to the implementation of the European Green Deal for the non-EU member states, so for the candidate countries? Does Croatia do something specific, concretely related to European Green Deal and other European Commission's priorities related to the international development cooperation? And then one related to the jobs. Will the process of the European Green Deal and digital transformation reduce the need for the new employment?
Okay, so let's first take the Green Deal. Of course, as I said, it is very important to involve our neighbors from the immediate neighborhood, especially the Western Balkans, when they prepare their plans and reforms for their economy, to actually also put a serious emphasis on greening their economies. Unfortunately, our region as a whole, I mean, not Croatia, but the region, the whole region of the Western Balkans, is not among the best known for observing different environmental conditions. So that's why there's a lot of things to be done, especially in the non-member states, and that's why it is present. This requirement is present in the reform programs that each of the aspiring countries have to prepare. With regards to Croatia, Croatia has also committed to follow this goal that 37% of the projects that Croatia has to prepare have to be related to projects related to Green Deal and in the coming years. So I mean, it is going to happen. We hope soon. And the question about the last question.
Sorry, I don't know if the last question was about the jobs.
Yeah. Well, on one hand, we're trying to become more and more, how to say, qualified. On the other hand, at the moment, no matter that we're talking about digital transformation, at this very moment as we speak, there is a need for over 1 million digitally qualified workers across the European Union. We don't have them. Only in the next 5 years, the jobs that are going to exist then would require completely new skills that we don't dispose now. So that's why we need to invest into acquiring these new skills. I don't think there's going to be a decrease in the need of workforce. On the contrary, let's not forget that for good or bad, Europe is actually an aging continent. The average age of our workforce is becoming higher, which means that very soon we are going to be left with not that many young people that are actively engaged, but people in their late, I don't know, 50s or early 60s. So from that point of view, we need to acquire these new skills, make our continent more attractive, and make sure that our young people that we train here or abroad are coming back and they contribute to the development of our economy.
Thank you very much for all of your answers. I don't think we have received any new in the meantime, but I think that I think that we reached the 1 hour duration of our meeting, so it was very well used. I will use this opportunity to ask you if you have any concluding remarks, Mr. Ognain.
Well, concluding remarks is that once again I would like to thank Božica and the team in Slavonski Brod for taking the time and the initiative to organize this exchange. They're really useful, and they're useful because we as a European Commission, European institutions, want to be present on the ground to the citizens to show them the benefits of being member of the European Union. And I only hope that this whole pandemic is going to be over very soon, and we're going to have a proper citizens dialogue in vivo, enjoying all the things, all the beauty things that Slavonia has to offer, and also with our friends in Bulgaria and Romania, and really keep our contact ongoing.
But thank you very much. With this, I would conclude our meeting and extend our gratitude to all the staff from the head of, from the representation of European Commission in Republic of Croatia, to all of the edicts from Bulgaria that joined us, and to edict from Cluj, from Romania. Also to all of the students and professors, the representatives of the network of schools ambassadors of European Parliament in Croatia, to all the media that joined us. We appreciate all of your questions and the time that you gave us, and especially thank to you, Mr. Ognain Zlatev, for all of your time and the answers you gave us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Good luck and stay safe.